All right, I think we're live. Almost live. The blue line is now across the page. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Hey, y'all. It is the 29th of June, 2023. We are here for the last live coding for a couple weeks. We're going to pick this up again 3 weeks from today on July 18th or so. And the reason we're taking a little break is for a few reasons. One, Catalyst season is upon us, and a lot of us are just taking a few moments away from learning to write Catalyst proposals. But as we were just talking about before going live, often writing a Catalyst proposal might be the best way to learn something. So these things are always connected. But also it's a holiday here in the United States next week. And then we have Catalyst deadlines and a final Voltaire workshop coming up after that. So lots going on. Plutus PBL is alive and well. We're up to 140 enrollees, and we've got 4 people across the finish line so far of onboarding and building background knowledge. So we're steadily moving towards the release of the specialization modules, and there's so much more to come on that. But for today, we were kind of just thinking together about the nature of experiments, which feels really relevant when it comes to writing Catalyst proposals. And Newman, you were talking about maybe base hits versus home runs, to use a baseball metaphor, right? We've got different kinds of experiments, sure bets and moonshots.
Yeah.
You want to keep going on that?
Yeah, maybe, because, it's like, what is your intention, or what is your goal, or what is your role, or what is your responsibility in the team? Like you can have folks that are just trying to get on base, like percentage hitters, just trying to get on base runners. Like that's the first 2 or 3 slots in a thing. And then you have a cleanup batter. A cleanup batter is a home run hitter, meaning that they don't mind getting outs, but they need to go yard. They need to hit home runs and drive in people that are on base. I think when I'm looking at proposals, it's kind of interesting to think: is this experimental? Is this like a base hit, like regular kind of thing? And that kind of got us into experiments, which Harsha, might come to you in a moment, because like the experiment and the scientific method, and like what is the hypothesis and the methodology. Help me out with that.
So I was just reading this book called, I think, The Gene or something today. And they were speaking about how like the DNA structure was created and all of that, and the number of times it was rejected, and the process they took to finally get to the double helix structure. And it was mostly like trial and error. They come up with a structure, they think it's fine, but then the scientific community constantly rejects it. And eventually they get to a point where like the structure is accepted by the whole scientific community. So the assumption is that this is the structure of like a helix, a structure of the DNA. And then like you get consensus on whether it makes sense or not. And that feels like how experiments are done mostly in the scientific community. But in our case, I don't know, I feel like proposals are saying there is a problem. We think this is a solution to the problem, and you need money to try it out and see if it actually makes sense or not. And if it doesn't like work out, like why didn't it work out? If we get the answer to why it didn't work out, I think it'd be like really helpful for the next iteration of the experiment.
Right. This is the assumption. Approve or disprove the assumption. This is the problem. And then, but where does problem and solution come in? Like this is the problem and this is our experiment, or is that where the experiment starts? Like, is that the assumption?
The solution itself is the experiment, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's problem. That's sort of the problem. That's the problem space. Have you ever heard that term, problem space? Um, and then inside of that is this solution, and then the solution is an experiment. And an experiment, I'm going to ask ChatGPT uh, because Nori's not here. I'm going to ask ChatGPT, what is an experiment?
Just thinking about Catalyst for a moment, what I agree, Harsha, with all of the ideals you're stating. And of course, we just have to acknowledge Catalyst is also a zero-sum game. It's a competition for limited funds, right? And that there's a practical reason why that must be. Funds are not limited, but it can also be a blocker to the collaboration of different proposers to recognize that, yeah, even though we're competing for funds, we're also collaborating to run experiments that in the long run are going to provide each other with insights. Fear plays a role here, right? Some of the best experiments will be the ones that are a bit off the mark, but generate a ton of learning. And now the race is on among people who are going to try to capitalize on those learnings, right? And so this will always be a tension. And I'm using that word very specifically. Among the different definitions for experiment that we might look to, there's a really good one in this book I referenced yesterday, Brave New Work, which highlights some of the evolutionary organizational principles. And so it describes the process of looping, which is really just the scientific method, right? Applied to organizations where, unlike discovering, if we talk about DNA, the simple fact is, if you have the tools to look at DNA, it does have a physical structure, right? Like this is, so there are questions that do have a one right answer that we can actually establish, but organizations don't work like that. Right? There's all sorts of stuff that you can do on a team or an organization that works perfectly and at the very same time doesn't translate to another group. Thank God for that, right? Like, thank goodness that we all have the opportunity to create different kinds of organizations, and there isn't just a one-size-fits-all answer. So now we come to this word tension. Identifying tensions is, in the evolutionary organizations step, the first step in running an experiment. With a tension identified, you can then consider some of the practices that you might want to choose to address that tension. And then finally, you design an experiment. Okay. And so practices, they're not exactly the same thing as tools in a toolbox, but they have some things in common, right? And after this, there's a whole checklist here. Well, I have a weird filter on. There's a whole checklist of 100 or so different tensions that organizations might experience. Rigid structures prevent experimentation. Failure is unacceptable. Learned helplessness. We aren't self-aware. Career paths are unclear. Like, you can hear all sorts of different types of tensions that people might notice. And I just named one for Catalyst, right? Because of the zero-sum game that Catalyst is, it's hard sometimes to keep a collaborative orientation towards problem solving. But isn't that tension an opportunity, right? What's maybe a practice that we might take on? What's an experiment we could take on to support organizations to orient a little more meaningfully towards problem solving? I know I just mixed the definition of experiment with a couple of other things there.
No, that's good. It's good. Yeah, well, I mean, that does get us down into the question, what experiments can we do to work with, what proposals can we come up with to work with this feature of catalyst, attention, that's this zero sum gameness. I mean, and then our intention, maybe that's outside of but our intention is to increase like collaboration and build cool, useful things that, make a difference for folk, that help people learn, that help, more tools and things be built with Cardano, that address the problems in organizations. Harsha and I are on the Dallas Love Cardano Challenge, and it's an organizational challenge, trying like what are the benefits of the DAO structure, and to support people who see the problem of existing organizations. Maybe it's even the existing organization that we're all involved in, which is Project Catalyst, and then we have a space where people can put these ideas, experiments, proposals. So yeah, but I don't have. I mean, we could.
Newman, do you remember we actually discussed this about how, because of the nature of Catalyst, there is more. We are fighting each other as opposed to collaborating each other, and we are discussing something called dependency fund or something like that. If your project is dependent on another project to move forward, then a small part of like your whatever you get funded is used to help the other team or something like that.
Yep.
But like it never went anywhere. So.
Yeah, that was that was with Dan. I think it's like synergy
fund. Yeah, that's
fund. Yeah, and it was basically it's just like, as we collaborate and we go into this game, which is zero sum, we say, hey, we're gonna kind of like do another game where if we win, we'll give you if we have to divide into winners and losers, the winners say, we're gonna support the losers to some degree, to keep teams going, to like I think that would be an experiment, and that would be cool. It would be because
you know what else?
I'm just
so you know what else is built like this is a layer 1 blockchain.
What?
Okay, so think about all of the stake pool operators on Cardano. They are competitors for blocks. However, by competing for blocks, they're all serving each other's best interest of keeping the Cardano network running in the first place. So all layer 1 blockchains introduce, I think, in a new way, level up our ability for this concept of adversarial collaboration, right? We can look out for ourselves at the same time that we're supporting something bigger. And with a little bit of game theory, this becomes not the space of idealism, but a space of real pragmatism, right? Competitors can collaborate. And so I've been thinking a lot lately about what would a similar mechanism look like on layers N+1, right? A layer 2 protocol like Catalyst is becoming, where, at the end of the day, this is the fact, right? If people, yes, within this tiny ecosystem, right? Catalyst and Cardano are still drops in the bucket when compared to, all of humanity. We're competing with each other for funds for short term so that we can survive and get stuff done. But why? Because really, we all want to build stuff that makes this protocol more relevant and more useful. And I might lose in a catalyst round, but still win in the long run because of what somebody else built. And I could pick it up and I can solve richer and deeper problems with those tools that were built.
Yeah, I mean, sum that up: losing the battle, winning the war, type of thing. Like that we
adversarial collaboration, right?
And is that in this book as like a pattern or something to look out for? Yeah, how can we? I mean, understanding that, I think that does help people in sort of what could be called adversarial and in a negative way, like kind of destructive competition. For instance, Major League Baseball players, I'm on a baseball kick, they compete against each other, but they don't, after the game, don't murder each other mostly. And we're not talking about the NFL because of the concussion thing and Aaron Hernandez, but there is like an acknowledgement of that we're all a part of a system, and you can level up that system to just humanity. I mean, and then when you come up with across AI and like you can keep drawing the circle bigger and bigger. But yeah, inside of Cardano, and then think of like all the, like, it's one of the favorite things about the ecosystem or the Cardano is that we're non-maximal. It's like we're not going to get into the PC versus Mac of the 90s, which was mean, like, and then when Mac failed and Microsoft bought out into Mac and supported it, it was an example of this synergy thing, like the winner being like, hey, we do need to keep this tension going. We need keep this adversarial collaboration going. So I'm going to keep you there. And I think this is a biomimicry thing, because like the predator-prey relationship keeps things in balance. And if the predators over predate, then that closes the ecosystem and it goes, the whole thing goes away. Natural intelligence, however it is, they kind of know when, I don't know how it checks and balances itself so that they don't do that. But, biosystems, that are in balance do that. They balance themselves, or somehow, in some way, they do that. We have the burden of this kind of self-aware intelligence where we kind of have to do it while the lights are on.
And there's all sorts of famous psychological experiments that show that a lot of us would rather not lose than all win.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So it's fascinating, but I'm not entirely convinced that those experimental outcomes are evidence of some, millennia's old nature of all of us, as much as symptoms of our more recent industrial training. And it's tough to disaggregate those two things, but I'm not willing to just settle for assumptions about quote unquote human nature when the whole system, the only system that all of us know, emphasizes zero-sum games, emphasizes competition over collaboration, emphasizes compliance over mastery, for example.
Okay, exactly. And now I just started on this book, Seth Godin's The Song of Significance. It's a short kind of manifesto type book, and it's really good. It's really good. It talks a lot about that, with this, that we struggle with home training, which is what my elementary school teacher would shout at us, that you got no home training. You got no home training. We're like, oh shit. And
that really stuck with you, huh?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm really fortunate. I'm really super fortunate that I had some really pretty intense elementary school experiments that I'm the that I have to say that I'm a product of. But maybe now in my 50s, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm waking up from it, or like want to tinker around with it or try to program myself. Like if I was programmed, the sort of I want to become a self-programming uh, mechanism, which is PBL, which is something that I do want to get to, and I'm mindful of the time. We're rolling into a third of our 90 minutes or session. I would love to get into like what proposals can we write, like how can we make a difference in the system, because that's what's my cognitive load is. Like I get all these ideas, and then like the outfielder, the little league outfielder, like looking at the bees and like picking flowers and stuff, and I'm like, oh, there's a whole nother game that's going on. And I've been both of those characters. I've been the teammate that's going like, stop looking at the flowers, catch the ball, this ball's coming to you. And then I've also been the person out there that's just like, oh, I got lost in the clouds. I was here in right field, like no one ever really hits it out of here, so oh shit, there's a left-handed batter. Let's you know yeah.
So let's get to Catalyst. And if I can just take another moment now to further frame the role of a Plutus PBL course, but towards something bigger. Okay. So thinking about problem solving for a moment, there are important problems that any of us can solve on our own. And that's part of the delight of a programming problem, right? I love the privilege of getting lost in writing some code because I have full agency there, right? And that's thrilling. That's for me personally, not for everybody, right? Some people just love development because of that part. It just feels awesome to figure stuff out, build something that's useful. But as we all know, the scope of software you can build by yourself is limited.
Yeah.
And real things, right? Real problems are solved by bigger groups. So eventually we have to orient towards collaboration. And I've had different levels of kind of peace over the 3 years I've dedicated to working in the Cardano ecosystem. But I've felt the most peace when I know that I'm in one of those trusted collaborations, right? When I know deeply that I don't have to do it all by myself. Now connect this back to adversarial collaboration, right? And collaboration in general. When we know that together, we're all working towards something bigger, something meaningful, it's easier to do our part, right? And when I say easier to do our part, that means a lot of things, but it also just means that, hey, if I know that somebody I trust has this part over here, therefore I can take it easy on myself about that, I'm more likely to eat properly, to exercise, self-care, proper sleep, so that I can do a better job at the part that's on me, right? And how many people do each of us know who maybe have burnt out in one way or another over the last couple of years, right? That's a blemish to the Cardano and Catalyst ecosystem. It's chewed some people up. We got to do better than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now step out of that for a moment and now just think more generally about organizations, right? We have the Catalyst example, sure, of teams or organizations competing for limited startup funds, right? Catalyst should really be the fuel that, I agree, Harsha, completely helps people run that first experiment to get going, right? But now more generally, organizations consider it right now a risk to train people. In many cases, right, it's seen as really expensive to train and onboard a new contributor to a company, a new hire. And there's rules that are put in place that limit the ability of people, in the medium and long term, right? A non-compete clause in a contract, for example, right? So because the competing organizations don't want to lose their investment in training somebody up. Well, what if organizations could share in that work of education, of training people, right? And what if you think about PBL here? 140 people have minted contributor tokens. Some people, they got started and the course just didn't fully resonate with them, not yet. And that's okay, right? It's free education and it's really a collaboration sensing tool. And people who resonate with this approach, maybe they'll stick around. Hey, here we are right now thinking about maybe can we write a Catalyst proposal together, right? This learning experience served as kind of an organizational sensing tool for bringing us together. There was no hiring, there was no recruiting, nothing like that. It was different from that. What if there were many other organizations providing the same free education as an end in itself to level up any individual contributor who wanted more skills, but also as an organizational onboarding sensing tool that came at the low cost? Hey, provide education. It's an end in itself, but find the people you need along the way. Now imagine this could apply to any number of organizations, but suppose there's just three, A, B, and C. Organization A providing this PBL,
right.
B PBL, C PBL, and all of them are leveling up contributors to the point where they could be more valuable to any of those three organizations. And some people might take C PBL and realize that organization C really resonates with them, become priceless contributors to that organization. Other people might train with organization C, but along the way find that organization C is not the one that resonates with, it doesn't light them up completely. Actually, it's organization B they found out they really wanted to contribute to. But this is happening at all three, right? People are poking around, doing some onboarding modules, learning what they can, finding their way to where they really want to contribute. And these three organizations that could be competitors, could be adversaries, and probably still are in some ways. They're also collaborating to build up just the talent of all the people who might eventually contribute in one way or another. And somebody who trained with organization C, but chose not to dedicate too much time there right now, that might become a network connection that only proves its value 3 years down the road.
Right.
We're missing out on all that if organizations only compete for talent and fear losing it after they train people up. And so this is what we're really trying to do. We want to see these PBL processes maybe take precedence over standard status quo HR functions. We want to see the provision of free education be both an end in itself. It's good for marketing collateral. Hey, we provide free education. That's a nice thing for an organization to be able to say. But why do we do it? Sure, we've got an idealistic streak in us, but it's not just that. It's that we know that by providing this, we're part of something bigger that's making sure that there's more problem solvers out there who can all collaborate in ways we can't imagine right now. And that's where emergence and evolution comes from.
Right.
So I just wanted to share that background. And we're already working on this with a couple of other groups. And we did a little look at the list of possible catalyst proposals from within the Andamio team yesterday. There's a couple for the DAO's Love Cardano's challenge, but a few of them are not really our proposals, but are looking at how other organizations might take on some subset of these tools to seed the network that I'm describing right now. Any questions about that high level view? That's the only additional high level stuff I have for today, but it feels worth sharing just to give a little context to how we're approaching Catalyst so far.
What do you all think?
Hey, Roberto, long time no see. Welcome.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking Catalyst, etc.
I'm in this baseball sort of analogy, and like training up of, like, for instance, individual players, knowing that the player will go to another team, you know, like, and those, while I don't know if they, you know, like one team, you know, one player really can't help another player in the field, but they could, you know, it's just so, there's such a sectionized, you know, like sections, you know, for instance, you know, all the players that get traded around and work in different groups, they kind of get to know reputation, and then they have their own players association. So when they negotiate, they play a meta game, you know, with the organization, with the owners, you know. So it's just like, I can think of those circles, like, you know, like in the DAO graph, you know, like a little circle that is, you know, like at this, from this viewpoint, it's, you know, players versus owners. You know, all the players are on a team, and the owners in there, and the audience or the spectators and the fans are in another, you know, sort of thing. But all that is to say, I can kind of see where skilling up a group of people that know what blockchain as a protocol, as a technology, is important. Like, everyone needs to do that now as we skill up. There's plenty of time for more aggressive sort of adversarial, lower collaboration. Yeah, I'm happy to get into sort of the practicals. I do think that there are some fundamental, like, skills, and then there's some fundamental whats, and there's some fundamental hows that are out there. You know, the what and the how is something that I've thought of in the past. And for instance, the what is, like, I would love to see a basic troubleshooting step. Remember the story I was telling about the baseball player that was like teaching the dad teaching the kid to catch, and they kept like throwing the ball, and they're like, well, the kid's not getting it, and they couldn't adapt down to like be with the kid to just like put the ball in the hand, or does the kid even recognize a ball? Troubleshooting is that. And when I think that I had a very fortunate learning experience in the theater, doing technical theater, where we had to really learn troubleshooting. The light's not coming on, the microphone's not working. Like, yeah. How do you even approach this problem? And it was one of the few times where we actually did instruction. They're like, time out, quit doing the professional work that the Atlanta public school system was getting for free from us, you know, underage labor, definitely violating labor laws on a daily. But the one time where we stopped, I did a history piece on Voltaire. Speaking of, in France and the theater group that he was a part of. And then the other one was we did a troubleshooting workshop where they took everything out and they were like, this system, and the system happened to be a light. And they were like, the light's not working. In the system, there are three parts. There's the light, the cable, and the circuit box where you plugged it in. And now you've got to figure out like which one it is, you know, and like how do you do it? And knowing like, you know, knowing in a systematic way that you have to find, you have to verify, you have to do a test, an experiment to verify. Anyway, a troubleshooting, I would love to teach people troubleshooting in a very real way, because it's a big deal in programming and making things work on these in these scripts. You know, like, is this what's broken? Like, we do troubleshooting constantly here at Gimbal Labs in the PBL. So yeah, that's on a very practical. That's a what, but then how? Like, how do we create a course, or do we create a module? Is there someone gets you know, someone facilitates it, and then we promote it to bring in, you know, things. The how is interesting to me. I have a pretty firm bead on the what, or the student learning target. You know, I can troubleshoot any system. Like, I feel confident that I can troubleshoot, that I can get into trouble and get out of it. But the how is curious to me. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just like an opinion, not an insight. But as I'm doing PPBL, what I realized is that I don't necessarily understand the language. I just have like these sentences. If I want water, can you give me water? Like, I can only use the sentence, but I cannot like reframe the sentence or so. And I was recently going through CS50, which is like an amazing course, by the way. And they start off with these drag and drop programs to learn how it functions. And that is why I was like thinking of Marlowe, because Marlowe has this drag and drop smart contract development thing. I just feel like it'd be a great place for people like me who have zero knowledge before coming into PPBL to just understand on a higher level how smart contracts work, what is the logic that goes into it. The moment I jump into like that IDE like creation, like the shell stuff, it like immediately like scares me away on the first step itself. So yeah, that those are my thoughts on the how to do it thing.
Yeah.
That's really cool. It reminds me of one of my favorite pieces of literature about mathematics education. And the 5-year-old brain is more capable of talking about calculus concepts than it is about actually learning addition and subtraction, right? And so, in Harsha, in your example, right, the bash scripts are the addition and subtraction, right? You'll get those eventually, right? But what are we ready for first? Well, we need the concepts. And eventually, you know the concepts well enough then to feel the psychological safety to say, okay, well, now that I know the concept, I can see why it would be nice to be able to write a bash script for this thing, right? In other words, there's hard limits to what I can represent in like a drag and drop Blockly interface, right? One of the best ways to teach somebody about for loops is to show them Blockly and have them try to do something 100 times. They're like, wow, it doesn't fit on the page. This is so unwieldy. I can't see the whole, yeah. Welcome, kid. Now you understand why 3 lines of code is a really nice alternative to drag and drop. But we don't have to start there. So maybe a compelling proposal could maybe be to propose like a Marlowe PBL and to frame it as an optional prerequisite to the broader Plutus PBL. And that there's 2 birds we'd be hitting right there. You know, I think Marlowe PBL needs to exist on its own right. And if it also serves the role of pre-onboarding people who want to go deeper into Plutus by giving them some of the concepts without the overhead of setting up the environment or being willing to play around in the terminal window, it could be really cool.
And is Marlowe a Blockly? Is it a, I mean, does it have that interface, like the visual interface?
It's been 2 years since I've looked. Who's played with Marlowe recently?
I was going through Marlowe a little bit, but like I only know that there is a drag and drop structure, and then you can play around with it in the website itself a little bit, but I don't know how to use it in real time at all.
It doesn't, I'm looking at Marlowe, docs.marlowe.iohk.io, and doesn't look like they're not starting off with sort of a visual interface. I think that would be yeah, like where is the starting point? Where is the conceptual thing? And I think Harsha really framed it well. It's just like, knowing how to plug in scripts versus understanding and working from understanding. And then there's a lot of cognitive load that, working with something that you're unfamiliar with and hasn't been sort of routinized, just starting up a node in the first couple things was like, really, I was like, okay, I gotta, this, it was just scary. And now it's sort of, you script it, you literally script it, and it just sort of runs in the background. I want to do something decentralized, like I want to have I guess it was interesting to see yesterday that I remember, way back when, like it was when I was just peeking in from time to time at Gimbal Labs, and it was like bounties were front and center.
Yeah.
And that was sort of, I was okay with it, and I thought that was great. But it seems like we've moved away from it because the reason why I like bounties is because decentralized. It's just, here are points, you can pick them up if you do this thing, so, and that to me is sort of structural, that helps to, manipulate or modify my behavior to help me to learn things, but it could be, there's real issues with bad gamification. But maybe we could solve bad gamification with good gamification and sort of how bad balance it out.
That's an example of a high level goal that we would make incremental progress on by looking at bounty structures, right? So we could zoom in and focus, and while doing so, the experiment would be helping us learn how to appropriately gamify a system.
Right.
So actually, okay, so a few things here. This is something I talked about all the time in my work right before jumping into Cardano, but great gamification has nothing to do with graphics. It has everything to do with the player feeling like the reward is I get to do the next thing, right? Think about every time, if you like video games, or if you've ever seen a kid get stuck in a video game, right? The thing that really keeps us there is, I just got to figure out this puzzle. Yeah, but why? Because if I finish it, I get to see what the next puzzle is. And then, right? And now I'm hooked, right? And development can be the same thing, right? That's where we really get into the flow state, right? So keep that part in mind. The bounty work has not disappeared. We first renamed it project instead of bounty for the reason that mostly because the way bounties are usually implemented, they are very much a zero-sum game, and they force people into working in a competitive way with no guarantee, right? So I don't have the data like how many bounty systems work right like this right now, but just based on observation, many of them put a task out there with a reward attached to it. And if you're the first one to get the right answer, you win the bounty, right? If you came in a close second, you might get nothing. You might have spent all that time, but for no reward. I'm not happy with that system. I don't want to rebuild that. So instead, the way the Gimbal project escrow system works is we allow people to make a commitment to doing something. And when they do, they get the promised reward, right? And there can be a expiration date, whatever seems fair. Right now, it's 30 days in the course, for example. And we can look deeper at the smart contracts. So this is running under the hood of PPBL right now. When you make a commitment to a learning module, you are using those contracts already. Where are we going? Well, at some point, we're going to move from pre-prod testnet to mainnet. And all of your contributor token datum is going to move over to mainnet. And when that happens, now you'll have a token that allows you to commit to projects with real token rewards instead of testnet token rewards. We can decide collaboratively when is the right time to do that for students in the course. But remember, like hopefully the first thing you read when you started taking the Plutus PBL course is that our goal is to help people become real contributors to real projects.
Yeah.
Right. And this is where it happens. So one proposal that we're definitely going to write, I would love help if anybody wants to help write this, but I'd like to create maybe even just a minimal proposal, 15,000 data, that would go directly into a treasury that would be for people who have moved into the contributor stage of the current PPBL course, right? Just to provide some meaningful, maybe not completely sufficient, but meaningful rewards, right? It feels good. And this goes back to the organization problem, actually, right? To get a lot of jobs, you have to have 2 to 5 years of experience doing something. Well, where the hell do I get those 2 to 5 years of experience if I'm just getting started? Okay, so we want to help with that by giving people opportunities to have a track record of experience and supporting them. You know, it feels good to get paid, even when maybe it's not fully sufficient, right? I've heard that from a lot of people as we've been experimenting with this. Yo, that contribution, we had some people say this last year, that contribution I made to last year's PPBL course, that was the first time I ever got tokens in return for doing something. Gosh, that felt good, right? Now that's not, you can't sustain an entire business on just that kind of feel good, but we can start there, right? So I'd like to fill a treasury, ideally with catalyst funds, to make that transition in this course. These contributions, they might be to just keeping the course up to date. They might be to adding a necessary prerequisite module, or they might be to helping build out some of the software itself, right? It could be a lot of different things. But I think we can separate it from maybe a separate proposal about facilitating live coding sessions, right? In the fall, there's going to be a new wave of people enrolling in Plutus PBL, right? And if the outside world starts to get wind of maybe a bull market incoming, that's always going to generate a new wave of interest as well. It will be really exciting to be ready for the next wave of enrollees in this course with people who are actually getting some amount of compensation for facilitating live coding sessions, and for it not to be like the same old voices. You know, Newman, thank you so much for already taking the lead, but you're going to be the same old voice soon enough too. Right?
That's right.
Right. So and incentives help. At the end of the day, if there's a little bit of a payment for doing something, it's just so much fairer to ask people. There's only so many of us who are like, I'll I'll try to bootstrap this system just out of whatever keeps me going, right? We need incentives. We just need incentives, right? So these are two proposals that we're already thinking about. It would be fabulous to co-author these with current enrollees in the course, right? But do you guys have questions about those? Anything else I just shared? Or does this get you thinking about other proposals that we might write? And I see Piotr too. Hey, man.
Hey guys. So I have a question, like specifically to the PBL course, and like how are you thinking people will pay for this course, or is it free?
This course is 100% free, and it's going to stay free. And ideally, this course pays people more than they ever get paid. Why would we do something like that? What kind of idealistic utopian nonsense is this? It's none of those things. We are going to prove over the next few years that this is a better system than status quo HR. We're going to do it. Okay. And this is a first step in doing that. What is the value of this PBL course back to Gimbal Labs? It's that we find people who actually want to work together. And that's priceless, right? No amount we could charge for this course would exceed the value of being able to find real collaborators.
I like it. The value is being able to find real collaborators that have like a social reputation that's set up. They have experience. There's, yeah, okay. So one way to look at like is just like what's the value creation? Like what is the artifact, or what's being generated? Kind of turning follow the money on its head. Follow the value.
If you talk to any startup founder, they'll tell you that finding the right team is the hardest part. And a team is not just people who have talent, right? If you don't trust each other, you don't have a team. Luckily, when people learn together, they tend to build up some trust together.
And learning, yeah, and I think that, so for instance, like we can look at the learning environment as like there's unintended consequences around it, and one of those lenses that we can say, okay, let's look at this through engagement or number of points or like however metrics, but you could look at a learning environment as like how much trust is built up between the teacher and the student, or between the students. Like I love looking at the social graph of a learning environment. Like what are they interacting with? Is it the teacher interacting with the student? Is it the teacher or the interacting with the environment? Like all of the nodes in the network, like what kind of network are you working? Is it a distributed network? Is it a centralized network? Is it decentralized, et cetera, et cetera? And then where does trust go? Like follow the trust, follow the money, follow the trust, follow the value, follow the, like what thread can we pull? And if we pull on the trust thread, like where does that lead us? Yeah.
To what extent is the teacher making themselves irrelevant? To
Right.
what extent is the organizational leader striving to make themselves irrelevant versus holding on to power?
Yeah, follow the power. Yeah.
It doesn't take much to tweak systems. This goes back, right? Like what I was saying earlier, like I don't believe these experiments that show us to be inherently selfish. I truly believe that's just a symptom of a system that we've been working with for a relatively short time in human history, but it's the only one we know, right? I don't think we have to tweak the system much just to rebalance towards a place where people are actually a little bit more incentivized to make themselves irrelevant, you know?
Right. Just what's coming up for me now is those leaders, and is the fear of that the thing goes away without the leader. You know, they're like, I have to do this because it just goes away if I don't do it. And then one, if that's, I mean, just as in response to that, one, if that's the case, then, you know, then it's just not, it's just, the system is not, it's just you, it's not a system. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. But we can build better systems. We can tweak these systems that do, and then we can, and the why, you know, the what, the how, and the why. The why is so that we don't keep burning out our leadership, you know, because I need those. I'm speaking very personally, like I need that leadership. You know, baseball analogy is not, you know, it's not as good as Tour de France and big league cycling analogy. Great dynamics, team dynamics in there is just so incredible. There's a great Netflix documentary. It's only a few episodes long. I think it's maybe 6 episodes, 6 hours. And it'll explain to you like the Tour de France, and you'll be pumped to turn it on day after tomorrow and watch, you know, the teams go at it. But all that is to say is there is team leadership where we have to say, this is the leader of our team. And then they have these things, just because it's the word they use, domestiques, service people, that support the team members. But then there's all these other games that go on, and they have to react again to the environment. And there's players and owners, and random fate plays a part. Like all these beautiful things interact. And if the team is going for it and really like good, then they can respond to it. Like the squad example that I've been mentioning.
That goes back to your theater example too about troubleshooting, right?
Exactly. Like, okay, this is
not going to panic when there's a flat tire.
A flat tire. This part's broken, and it's the drama. Yeah. The drama is really, really beautiful. When you know the mechanics break or when the people break. I mean, there's like real drama and anguish, and you know the human spirit is like on full display there.
You said a few minutes ago, right, how sometimes this feeling of I need a leader.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like it's safe to assume that everyone needs that.
Yeah.
Even the best leaders, right? So to me, the ideal is systems, organizations where leadership comes and goes, right? If you need somebody to be a leader and somebody's well fit for the job, they should feel the full confidence to step up, really step into that, be every bit the leader, maybe even momentarily be autocratic if that's what the situation calls for. But then maybe even in the same day, that same leader can step back and just be a contributor, taking orders from somebody else who's the leader. That's where I want to live. I'm in a band right now, and we have 2 lead singers, and we take turns, and I get to sing half the songs, and I love that. And I get to be the band leader half the time, but the other half the time I'm following, and I love that so much. It's so nice to share those responsibilities.
So the band is something that I don't have I don't have a lot of experience with, other than to be like, whoa, there's an incredible amount of like not very subtle communication and leadership and followership in a band structure. You know, like improvising and setting bass lines and doing the rhythm section, like it's all has to work, and it all has to be communicated, and it all has to react. Because like when the lead singer forgets a line, and we're on, okay, are we gonna go back and get that line? You know, or you know, like there's a lot of communication. It happens super subtly. It does not work. Like at one point I was just like, Yeah. There's and it requires a different management. You know, like you can't manage a band like you can manage, you know, a military squad or you know,
Right.
a gaming
Yeah,
thing. You know,
that's right.
very different.
It took me a long time to understand why my favorite music was what it was.
Mm,
But later on, I realized, oh, all of my favorite bands are people who are bands that don't have a clear frontman.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
They're those where you have the intricate music that can only come from a group of people where everybody is the leader, right? Where everybody has some creative power. Anytime that creative power is too centralized, it just comes across in the vibe of the music. And right. And personally, it's all of that stuff has never resonated as much with me.
Right.
Radiohead is a great example. They're like a famous example. And I've always loved Radiohead's music. It's always been hard to say why, but that's right. They are able to do intricate things because it is, you know, it's a bunch of guys it's been the same lineup since they were teenagers.
Right.
They trust each other completely. If the world wants to have a front man, sure, the press can name a front man, et cetera, right? But within that band, they all know how important they all are to each other. And it comes across loud and clear.
Yeah. And that, I wonder what that looks like in a learning band, you know, like,
Ooh.
like, yeah, what does that look like in a learning team? Because so much of our learning, this takes us into kind of interesting territory, maybe away from proposals, but you know, so much, there's just like, we're going to see a crap ton of like teaching and learning proposals in Fun 10. You know, there's going to be a ton of them. And some inspired, some maybe, you know, less inspired, you know, I think all with a good heart, you know, like generally the people are trying to build good education and onboarding stuff. But yeah, it's interesting forming. Well, here's the thing. Most of it is top down. Most of it is not decentralized. Most of it is not like we want to build a learning team that we go around doing learning stuff. That's something that I wanted to get to. You remember Sophie? Sophia?
Yeah.
So he had, and I can't find it, I was looking through Lido, but he had sort of a genius grant, like learner direct support. And it was like, yeah, you get 1,000 ADA a month and you have a requirement. There's a you know, a gamified sort of points to get, and then you can get, but it was like to learn and broadcast your learning, like learning in the public. So you know, there's some stipulation and stuff, but it was direct to learner incentive through, you know, like a little portal or some mechanism, but low. It wasn't a entity funded. It was like learner funded. You know, like it was direct to consumer payment type of model.
Yeah.
You know, like a stimulus check, like a learning stimulus, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like if you're learning on the environment, and that's something that I think could be a very short, sweet proposal. I don't know how it did. I can't find that proposal, but I would like, for instance, I would like for, and I think we talked about this, my treasury, the funds that I put in by using Cardano and making transactions and fees that I put out, like I would love for that to pay for like the tools of Cardano. Like there should be a fund that says, I need to pay for this, or like the support for like your internet connection or your Zoom account, or, you know, if you're participating in this environment, you're taking these courses, you're adding value, you're, you know, doing the things like a team member, then you shouldn't have to scrape up, you know, $10 a month to get your Zoom account, or, you know, some other, your scheduling tool, or if you're doing promotion for all this stuff and you're on a free buffer account or a free, newsletter, like all these app, subscription services, there should be a place where you should say, hey, look, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing in the system. Here are the tools that I use, and then they could be funded, or some way of like getting the need expressed and getting the need met.
I think my Zoom account is the worst point of centralized failure in Gimbal Labs right now, right? Because it would change everything if Gimbal Labs could just afford a whole bunch of Zoom accounts for everybody who needs one. And
yeah, that was the point of failure. I remember it was me, Harsha, and Faizan that came we're like, well, yeah, I can't make it, and we're like, okay. And we hit it again. It was just like, oh, well, they'll just be there, and then it was funny. And the Zoom account would like if we each had our own Zoom account, it would have been great, or one of us in the in that unit.
Right. And just coming back to the proposals, if we were to help like write these proposals, is it okay if I just created Word documents and shared the document amongst whoever wants to help, and then we can keep changing stuff up?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Do you already have a document with the proposal template headings in
I mean, it takes not very long to create one, so I'll do that.
So this is the part. This is a growth area for me that I'm practicing. I still don't like asking for things. Okay. But I'm gonna try to bravely put this out there. If either of you guys would want to take lead on this one, something like this, or if we brainstorm for a few minutes, some additional ones we might be thinking about, I recognize that would be symbolically valuable, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be better for this proposal to come from somebody other than me, and it would show more clearly where we're going. Harsha, you willing to take a stab at it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would love for others to also contribute, because I would be limited in some areas, but yeah.
Without a doubt. Like, and this is the thing, right? I don't hesitate to ask for feedback. I'm all yours, but hopefully other people are too. And there's some voices in this one and co-proposals. But like this would be such a good example. And it would be, first of all, I don't even know what challenge to put it in. Could make an argument for the open source one, could make an argument for others. And there's probably a little bit more problem definition that we could do together. But I'd be really interested to see your interpretation of the problem just based on what we've talked about today so far as a starting place. Thank you. That's incredible. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. I will. Yeah, this would be, these last two would be good to go back and review the video, because yeah, we are sort of getting into defining the problem space. I think we did a lot, like where, what are the characters in this story, and why does the story always end, all these people, sign up for the course and then they leave, that people have to solve the same educational issues, every entity has to solve the same educational issues, and it's not, there's not enough something to go. Yeah, that would be fun to sort of get into that problem statement. And I think that might be where the new proposal framework is a little more clear. It's not as, and I think that we can write, like, it's not a huge ask to write proposals. I think, well, here's something to talk about is, so I read a proposal And I'm like, man, this is a really good proposal. Like, you're really clear, and you've got, you know, and it's like, I like this part and I like this part. And then I'm like, and it's the way you write is super clear and like concise and just tight. And I'm like, oh, are you using ChatGPT? Like, wait a minute. You know, I was like, and I don't think I asked them directly, but I mean, from what I understand, from what Chris was saying, it's like, it's fine to use ChatGPT, but we are scanning for it, and if it's egregious or violates community norms, unwritten sort of norms, then it may get flagged or
Proposals don't get flagged, only reviews get flagged. You can use ChatGPT.
oh, and proposals aren't scanned for ChatGPT?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. I think that really what they're just trying to do is just like automated like duplicates and but if you're just using it to tighten up your clarity on stuff, I don't think that doesn't violate my norm, you know. Like, if like I said, I was supporting it, or I was giving kudos for somebody for writing in such a way that was clear and easy for me to understand. So, you know, right on, keep doing it. You know?
Yeah. So, Harsha, thanks again for starting this one. We'll follow up on that. Roberto Mayen is working on a proposal for live coding sessions. I think it would be really cool to have a bit of incentive for people to really prepare to be the facilitator and to get a little something in exchange for that, for these Wednesday, Thursday sessions. And he's also thinking about how we can start running live coding sessions in other languages, right? We're providing the course in 5 other languages, but we don't have the live coding sessions running yet. So just know that's if anybody needs his contact and you want to support, just let me know. But I think a lot of you know him already, or just say so here. If you'd be interested, I'll put you in touch. And is there anything else that any other experiments that would be fun to throw into the ring?
I got a question. I just wanted to ask, like, for the PBL, because I assume that the PBL, like the funds from Catalyst is the main source of the income for the people who are working on this. So like, I was like thinking, how long can PBL sustain itself, given the fact that we don't know how long the Catalyst funds will be going on? So, like, we're thinking about other sorts of like income, like ways that you can monetize this.
Yes. Yeah. And the truth is it can't sustain itself for that much longer. It may be worthwhile. I hadn't thought of it the way, Newman, you said it a few minutes ago. Like, if there are a lot of proposals coming in for education, I think it's worth it for us just to represent maybe this project as a high level, just so there's a record of it being there, even among the many different options. But even more than that, yes, Piotr, we are in the process of building an actual business with a sound revenue strategy.
Never know if we're actually live yet, so I've watched the old blue line go.
It sounds familiar. Yeah, very much working on it and taking a really pragmatic approach to building up a real business.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. Great.
Sorry about that. I was grabbing a YouTube link. because this live coding sessions, like there are like the facilitators collective, you know, and Vanessa, who's leading that up is proposal friendly. You know, she's happy to get and she wants to get sort of that out. So
Excellent. Excellent. We're building up some documentation for people who might want to include Andamio as a line item in other proposals, and already working with a few teams on something like that. But if anybody, right, and this will be connected to a lot of the Odin work as well. The precise relationship between Andamio and Odin is still being developed. But I think it's going to be a really compelling relationship, and I'm excited to share more in those Odin calls. But yeah, keep that in mind, Newman, as you're looking at Facilitators Collective. And I think there's already been some conversations there, but if not, we can take a look at what it might look like to include a little bit of LMS structure or the project treasury and escrow contracts in a proposal.
okay, yeah.
All right, but we got 3 minutes. Let's get crazy for just a second. Is there anything else that, like, what's the wildest experiment that ideally there'd be place for in Catalyst this time around?
Oh, something with games. I was talking to, maybe it was Lucas, that wanted to do like very basic games. And who was it? Was it here? I don't know. I've been having so many conversations, but there's like a CEO like trying to figure out, maybe it was Yoram, like a CEO that was just trying to figure out blockchain and making all these regulations and stuff. And it's just like, you know, it's such a big giant thing. And it's just like just a simple Pac-Man, you know, punch the button game with simple, not graphics, but just simple, good gamification things that as a secondary byproduct, you know, people are making transactions on chain. There's no, like, and then it can be like a learning, like a learning, you know, PBL module, you know, once this team, you know, like a side quest, you know, a Hydra head on the Gimbal Labs thing, to like make a game like that really does have, yeah. So that's one of the things that I've been thinking about. There's that great repository of Python. I think they're in Python or some similar language, old school Python. And it's got like 50 different games. They're all basically like 4 types of games, but they're real simple. And, you know, they're just, but you can, if you want to do any kind of front end, you can skin them. I mean, they run in like, you know, however, it'd be, I don't know. I've always got education and games like together. Yeah, educational gaming on my mind.
Such a cool idea. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, man.
Yeah. I was actually also thinking about Tetris game. So what I was thinking was that people would pay, say, 20 ADA for signing up, and then the one who wins the game wins all the pool of the ADA people paid when they sign up. But then, you know, I was thinking, like, you know, with all the AI stuff, people can use maybe AI to have an advantage. Yeah. So yeah, it's not the best idea.
Oh, was it here that we were talking about the, oh man, now like ideas, like maybe this is someone's intellectual property, but like a Trivial Pursuit, like a trivia ADA trivia game? This coming probably someone else's. Please don't take that idea if it wasn't.
Oh, Roberto, I loved Crypto Zombies. That's how I learned Solidity.
Oh.
Oh, that's a blast from the past. That's funny.
Oh,
I mean, yeah, it would be wonderful to get a full scale team to maybe build up that into a PBL course, because I know that the game approach can be a little bit more impactful. Roberto, what do you think? I saw a hand there, but you're muted. Check, check.
Hello, 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 hello.
hey, all
Hey,
right.
gotcha. What's up?
Oh, how are you?
Good.
Happy to hear you.
Same. I just coincidentally received the notification on Discord. I want to join. I want to see what's happening. Maybe, yeah, the idea is use the gamification and the fun approach to get people on board of the concepts in the practical way. Not exactly practical. I think PBL does a best job for that. I'm thinking on the point of applicating the concepts to something that might make sense, especially in dealing with, as far as I have get with the concepts are making customized collections of recipes for assets with native tokens and parameters that actually can work in the way that zombies deal with properties.
Yeah.
That what's actually happening in a learning environment with learners on a session, and we do this. Oh, and I was like, oh, this is quite interesting, and I'm thinking that might be an interesting. It's like a dream. I got like a few ideas around what I think I might do. I initially think that I wanted to do with mech warriors, because I'm a fan. But now I'm thinking that maybe cars is going to be more approachable to most people. And, understanding that a car needs the tire probably makes more sense that a mech warrior can have a new missile pod. So basically that idea on making these constructed composites of NFTs assets, and then the dynamic of the validators to deal with the interchanges of the changes of state, and to make it into a sound game. And now I'm getting into the realm of thinking as I speak. So that's basically the point. But if you are familiar with crypto zombies, you know what I mean by the fun part. It's more approachable for some people. It's not for everybody.
Right.
But I can take the niceties of that approach.
Yeah, I agree. That's my favorite compliment I ever got about Plutus PBL, is that it felt like an RPG to some people.
Nice.
And right, if you can add that graphical layer, there are some really nice concepts that are easier to illustrate if you're talking about leveling up some character, right? Whatever, car, mech, zombie, etc. But that would require a bigger team, right? So that this is one where maybe we're getting there. Maybe it happens eventually. But there's also the concept of just an R&D proposal. I wish it was easier to get a pure research and development proposal through Project Catalyst, just to do, say, a few months of work sketching something like that out. But I'd be willing to review a proposal like that if anybody runs with it.
So that kind of brings me down to a learning needs assessment. There's not that. Did you ever come across that, James? And I know we're rolling up to time, but a learning needs assessment is just basically oh gosh, I just had it. It's like the gap. It's a research and development, a simple document, or a simple project, a sort of relatively straightforward project that tries to document the gap between what is and what the organization desires or what they want. Yeah, and it really could become a foundational document. Do you remember Michael Modig?
Yeah, of course. Yep.
Yeah, I've reached out to him several times, but he had a proposal around this. I wonder, I mean, and then that kind of made me think, I was like, oh, there's a bunch of proposals that were highly voted, but just didn't get funded. You know, can we revive some old proposals? For instance, I was looking for that Sophie proposal about this sort of direct funding to students, and I couldn't find it. We could try to find Modig's needs assessment proposal and see if he wants to revive it. You know, at this late stage, it might be, there might be gold pardon the analogy, but in the trash, the things that we pass by, we could maybe go back and refine, iterate, especially for projects that are kind of that the people have left.
Yeah.
So that might be a fun hour to spend, like going through like old favorite projects that didn't go.
Yeah.
But the needs assessment, for instance, is just one of the, I think it's a process from legacy learning that I really like, because it has this like sensing part. I think that when learning gets out of touch is when it goes wonky, and this is their one thing that they're like, oh, we want to look around and who are the players, what are their needs, what are their attributes, let's look at these characters in this learning story, learning narrative, learning movie, and really treat them with empathy, not just bad guys and good guys and dumb people and smart people and the people that are doing it right and the people that are doing it wrong. Like, let's paint them with a real colorful brush, not just black and white. Yeah, and the needs assessment could help us with that. Yeah.
It's been a while since I've looked at like a good learning needs assessment. If you have a favorite, could you drop it in Discord and maybe, or we could do it in the Gimbal Labs Discord or even the Odin Discord and just play with those concepts.
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that could come together really quickly because it's such a clear, practical idea.
And it's very established. Like, anyone that's got an advanced degree in education has done needs assessment,
Right. And this actually, I think, is similar in some ways to what we were talking about earlier in the week about grabbing like some S3 patterns and saying, hey, could we build a contract component for this?
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, it wouldn't be hard to map the current state of the PBL contributor token to the outcomes of a learning needs assessment and to kind of the best of both worlds.
Yeah, well, we are sort of set up in that model with the student learning targets. So it's like we have we have an API endpoint. They're right there. I think that works. I think that makes the analogy. Like, their input is our output, or our input is their output. I guess that's the deal. Yeah. So.
Right. Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about learning targets as organizational interface, but we'll save that. We'll get
That's fun 11, baby. Let's do it.
Hey, so unique couple of days of live coding. I've found it soul fulfilling and more. Thank you just for going this direction.
Just to put a little salt in the sugar, I love this. It is great. It is soul fulfilling, but it's sort of it is tiring. And I love those old, like when we come and really just hammer through the modules, and it's like, we get into a breakout room and me and Harsha and then somebody that I haven't really met before, like we go through processes, we help each other. Like, those are this I feel is, you know, it feels good to me, but it's backstage. I love being front of house. You know, I love
Right.
being, you know what I'm saying?
Right. No, I have a hard cap on how many high level conversations I can have before I start to wither a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a 3-week stretch coming up. I'll next be able to attend live coding on July 19th. And I'll be ready to just go deep and practical for these 3 weeks. We'll be post Catalyst. I'm sure some people will be taking a little bit of time off during that time. So we'll see who shows up. But yeah, I'm excited for that, getting back to the hands-on stuff. We have so many great live coding sessions ahead of us as people get to module 204. And we really look at a tiny full stack dApp for the first time, and we troubleshoot the assignment on 204. I'm so excited for us to get there together. And then that's going to launch us into kind of the deeper choose your own adventure in the 300 level modules.
Hey, should we, like with these next weeks, 5 and 6 and July 12 and 13, should we write hiatus down, or should we are we just like open, or?
Yeah, any objections to that? I thanks for the reminder. I meant to ask about that. Any objections if we just officially say that there's no live coding for the next 2 weeks, and I'll put it on the PBL website?
And here I'm going to electioneer for a moment. The reason why we'd want to put hiatus down so that it doesn't feel like just people show up and then no one shows up,
Right.
So, and then that's one thing, but then we could put like open space, but then that sort of puts some sort of like there's a little pressure to be like, oh, we want to show up or want to facilitate, or you kind of like, I like the idea of saying, no, this is a like a holiday, of course you can show up in the Discord and, get people to help you, of course, but like it is like, we're taking a break,
Let's officially take a break. There haven't been enough of them in the Cardano ecosystem.
Yeah.
Unless you're talking about epic catalyst breaks, but that's all right. Yeah, no, that feels really good. And I'll put a little message on Discord to the same tune, but encouraging people still to, if you're stuck, if you got a blocker, you got a question, of course, bring that to Discord. And anytime people want to jump into a live room, of course.
Cool.
All right. Appreciate it. And Newman, thanks for saying that last thing about
high level.
Questions. Yeah, high level is exhausting. And we're lucky to have real things to do to keep us grounded.
That's right.
All right.
Okie dokie.
Thanks, everybody. Be in touch about Catalyst. See you soon.